The storm didn't start with a soundbite. It started with a vacuum. A claim with no audio, a denial with no transcript, and a fan base already on edge. In the span of a few days, a single sentence, "Caitlin should be grateful," morphed from a locker room whisper into a league-altering question. Did the league's most powerful voice really say it about its most visible star? Or did an already tense labor moment spin a private conversation into something it was never meant to be? The answer matters, not just for Caitlin Clark, but for every player watching the calendar inch toward a CBA deadline. Here's the spark. Minnesota's Napheesa Collier, all WNBA talent, WNBA PA vice president, and a voice players listen to, used her exit interview to unload on league leadership. Among her most explosive claims, in a private conversation earlier this year, WNBA Commissioner Taffy Engelbert told her that Clark should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court because without the platform the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. Collier also said Engelbert had told players they should be on their knees grateful for the media rights deal. No recording, no transcript. Just a detailed memory from a player with skin in the game and a league commissioner who would be expected to choose words with surgical care. In the outrage economy, those 26 words did the damage. The grateful line ricocheted across feeds, swallowed context, and took on a life of its own. Collier's framing wasn't subtle. She tied the comment to a core labor grievance. Young stars who drive revenue are stuck on rookie-scale pay for 4 years, even as the league enjoys a historic surge of attention. In that construction, be grateful sounds less like perspective and more like a power move. It's why the fire spread so quickly. To players who feel undercredited, the line carried a very specific sting.
Then came the first plot twist. Caitlin Clark herself. The Fever Guard backed Collier's broader concerns, calling them valid, and added that Engelbert had not reached out to her since Collier's remarks surfaced, an awkward admission that fed the narrative of a widening communication gap between the league office and the face of its current boom. Clark's words weren't a pile-on. They were measured, almost clinical, but the lack of direct contact was a needle scratch that no PR plan could fade out. Timing made it worse. This wasn't February or a mid-season lull. This was finals week, the biggest stage of the year, just as the league and unions stare down on October 31st expiration of the current labor deal after the players opted out last fall. One bad headline is noise. A trust story at contract time is leverage. Even neutral fans understood the stakes. If the commissioner truly said it, the optics are brutal. If she didn't, the league still has a messaging crisis that's now bleeding into its marquee event. So, did she say it? At her finals news conference, Cathy Engelbert said no. She labeled the circulated remarks inaccurate, went on the record that she did not make those comments, and acknowledged, "I have to do better." That denial wasn't hedged. It was categorical. In the same setting, she pushed back on the "on their knees" phrasing as well, portraying the whole episode as a mischaracterization of private dialogue. If you're scoring it at home, allegation detailed, denial explicit. Welcome to the gray zone where trust lives or dies. When a public figure denies a quote, fans instinctively ask, "What's the paper trail?" That's the rub. There isn't one. No audio, no minutes, no third-party transcript. What exists is Collier's careful recollection and Engelbert's categorical rejection, with real-world momentum pushing both narratives. And because there's no neutral record, people default to prior beliefs. If you think the league undervalues players, the line sounds plausible. If you think social media hammers context into dust, the denial feels sensible. That polarization is why one sentence triggered an earthquake.
Clark didn't embellish. She didn't perform outrage or play gotcha. She simply validated the issue, the economic mismatch for rookies who move markets, and revealed that the commissioner hadn't called. For many, that absence said more than any denial. The face of the league is telling you the league's leader hasn't checked in during a reputational wildfire that revolves around her name. You don't need a comms degree to see how that reads. Underneath the quote war sits the real fight: money, power, and timing. Collier has been blunt for months about officiating consistency, player safety, and compensation. She's not hunting clout, she's placing markers ahead of a negotiation that will define her prime earning years and the next era of the WNBA. That's why the "be grateful" line isn't just a PR problem. If unaddressed, it's evidence in the court of player sentiment that the people counting the dollars don't fully appreciate who's making them. And the clock? It's loud. The union's early opt-out means the current deal ends October 31, 2025, and reporting suggests a fresh agreement by the deadline is unlikely. Translation: both sides might need an extension or risk work stoppage specter creeping into the discourse. That's not prophecy, it's math plus history. Every negotiation features brinksmanship, but when tempers flare in public right before the buzzer, everyone feels the floor tilt. Perception isn't everything, but it's never nothing. Days before the finals, you want headline words like celebration, showcase, growth. Instead, the lead story became inaccuracies, grateful, and do better. Even with the denial, the semantics of power are stubborn. Be grateful from a league office doesn't sound like stewardship, it sounds like a boss reminding labor who signs the checks. That may be unfair to what Engelbert intended, but communications are judged by how they land, not how they leave your lips.
There's also an officiating subplot that's been simmering all season. Star players, including Collier, publicly said consistency had slipped, and the commissioner's June response, essentially winners don't complain, losers always do, came off to some as dismissive. Layer that on top of a summer in which players wore "pay us what you owe us" shirts at All-Star, and you've got a context where any phrase implying gratitude is going to set off alarms. It's not one quote, it's a stack of kindling. If you're Team Engelbert in this argument, there is a case. The W is bigger than one star, Clark benefits from a league platform that predates her, and commissioner-led structural gains like enhanced travel and a looming media rights reset are designed to lift all boats. Growth has been real, the data is visible, but good faith context is not the same as a player hearing "be grateful," particularly when rookie wages lag far behind the value of the spotlight they deliver. Two truths can coexist and still clash. If you're Team Collier, you see something else. A league that's learned to brand growth faster than it's learned to share it, a communication shop that wins on LinkedIn and loses in locker rooms, and a pattern where player grievances about officiating, safety, and pay draw careful statements instead of concrete fixes. You don't need to believe every rumor to believe the vibe. It's written on players' faces when these topics surface. And for a labor union already in a leverage window, vibes are currency. Clark's vantage point is trickier. She's the accelerant for the league's current demand, but she's also a rookie who has never asked for the deification that has followed her everywhere she dribbles. She understands what fandom and friction look like. She's lived both since Iowa, and her public tone has been steady. Appreciate the platform, push for more, keep it about basketball when possible. It's not fence-sitting, it's professionalism in a season where every word she says spins into a headline.
While this specific dispute boiled, players and fans didn't wait to sort into camps. Fever guard Sophie Cunningham torched league leadership in her exit interview, saying with camera-ready bluntness what many had been saying in private, that communication feels off and that the people making choices don't always seem plugged into the basketball reality. That doesn't prove or disprove Collier's quotes, but it explains why they resonated. When trust is thin, even a rumor can sound like a receipt. To Engelbert's credit, her denial didn't stop at "I didn't say it." She put her name to a promise: "I have to do better." That's not lawyer speak. That's an admission that, accurate or not, the perception of dismissiveness has taken root and needs uprooting. In a league battling for every national minute, the commissioner knows the brand can't afford to look at odds with the athletes who are the brand. Words are cheap, yes, but in leadership, words are also scaffolding for whatever comes next. There's another fresh twist. AP reported Collier canceled a planned meeting with Engelbert in the aftermath of the public back and forth. That's a gut punch to any hope of quick de-escalation. Whether the cancellation was tactical or emotional, it signals that player leadership is comfortable letting this breathe in public for a beat longer. If reform is coming, players want to see it in writing, not hear it in a presser.
Strip away the noise and you're left with a clean scoreboard of facts. Collier alleged the lines about Clark and about players being on their knees grateful. Engelbert denied saying them. Clark called Collier's larger points valid and said she hadn't heard from the commissioner. There is no recording, the CBA clock is ticking, and the league is simultaneously navigating record attention and fan scrutiny. That's the truth you can hang a microphone on. Everything else is inference, however sensible it sounds. Now the uncomfortable question. Why did a one-on-one recollection carry more weight than a podium denial for so many fans? Part of it is Collier's credibility. She's not known for throwing rhetorical grenades. Part is a season-long fatigue with platitudes. And part is an old story in pro sports, labor trusting labor more than management in the absence of receipts. This is why the league's communications approach can't just be defensive, it has to be demonstrative. Show the fixes, show the timelines, show the table where players help decide the fixes. Zooming out, the grateful flap is a proxy war over value. Clark's presence has helped turn random weeknights into must-watch television and turned road arenas into instant events. Collier's framing, Caitlin, Angel, Paige, drive massive revenue, is deliberate. It's the union writing the opening chapters of a revenue-sharing argument without saying the phrase out loud. You can call it a narrative play. Players call it leverage. And in October, leverage is oxygen. Even if you accept Engelbert's denial at face value, this episode reveals a messaging blind spot any commissioner would need to fix. Players aren't hearing appreciation in a way that feels real. That doesn't require grandiose speeches. It requires specificity that hits the locker room, clear commitments on officiating resources, transparent injury reporting standards, safety enhancements, development dollars, and an honest revenue conversation that acknowledges how outsized the top draw has been this season. That's the language players translate as respect.
And let's be fair, running the modern W is threading a needle with oven mitts. The commissioner's job isn't to pick a favorite star, it's to grow everyone's pie and negotiate against a broad set of stakeholders with competing priorities. Owners, media partners, sponsors, and a rapidly diversifying audience that doesn't agree on what a win looks like. When growth arrives this fast, frictions multiply. You can read Engelbert's "do better" line as a recognition that the league's internal bandwidth has to catch up to its external momentum. Still, the optics of no direct call to Clark linger like a low-grade fever. The commissioner can deny a sentence and still miss a moment. A 3-minute phone call. "I didn't say it. I value you. Here's what we're building." Wouldn't fix systemic issues, but it would have changed the temperature. Instead, the vacuum held, and fans filled it with worst-case assumptions because that's what fans do in 2025. Absent context, the loudest narrative wins. If you want a deeper reason the grateful phrasing drew so much fire, look back at the way players felt let down earlier when the league's top office didn't forcefully condemn the ugliest fan vitriol around the Clark-Reese era. Players took note. They're not asking the commissioner to referee fandom. They're asking her to set values. When that didn't land, it created a reservoir of skepticism that any new misstep can tap into. That's why this blew past a routine he said, she said, and exploded into a referendum.
And there have been genuine attempts at public goodwill. Over the summer, you saw collaboration, shared all-star moments, and even the commissioner surprising Clark with an all-star captaincy call, a not-so-subtle acknowledgement of her place in the firmament. But symbolism lasts one news cycle, systems last a season. The challenge now is bridging that gap. Here's where speculation lives, and we'll label it. Rumors among fans and some pundits suggest that if a deal isn't reached by Halloween, player leaders could harden their stance, using moments like this to prove the point that leadership doesn't get it. That doesn't mean a walkout is imminent, it means the climate is brittle. With reporting already hinting a new CBA by October 31st is unlikely, every trust fracture, however small, becomes a pressure multiplier. Meanwhile, there's a basic question hovering over the basketball part of this. Can the finals and the postseason storylines rise above the labor noise? In theory, a brilliant series is the best PR in the world. In practice, the most viral clip right now isn't a Dagger 3, it's a quote that may or may not have been said. That mismatch tells you how star-driven and conversation-driven the W has become. The league's biggest strength, its personalities, can also be its most temperamental engine. For Clark, the path through is familiar. Keep playing, keep answering, keep refusing to pour gasoline. She's already demonstrated a knack for threading the impossible needle, acknowledging the reality of her visibility while staying grounded enough to be coachable and team first. That balance is why her words land. When she says someone else's point is valid, it isn't performative. It's a calibrated admission that she's listening. And that, oddly, makes her the most credible ref in a game no one can officiate. For Collier, this is about more than a headline. It's about a paper trail. Canceling a meeting signals confidence that the moral math is on her side. She doesn't need to win an argument in a conference room. She needs to win the next one at the bargaining table. That's not cynicism, that's strategy. And whether you love it or hate it, strategy wins negotiations, especially when the public optics cooperate.
For Engelbert, a denial is table stakes. A plan is the game. The quickest way to turn do better into reality is to turn players, especially vocal leaders, into co-authors of the fix. Don't just invite them to a meeting. Hand them agenda items and decision rights. Publish timelines. Assign names to deliverables. Announce a monthly officiating review with player liaisons. Put revenue mechanics on a whiteboard and show how any new media money touches salaries. The optics of partnership can be as powerful as partnership itself, but you need both. Now to the question that brought you here. Did the commissioner really tell Caitlin Clark to be grateful? Based on verifiable facts, we can only say this. Collier says yes, Engelbert says no. Clark hasn't claimed to hear it firsthand and says she hasn't been contacted. And there is no public recording. If you came seeking a smoking gun, it doesn't exist in the public record. What does exist is a bright flare exposing the distance between what players feel and what leadership thinks they've already communicated. There's a version of this story that ends small. A clarifying statement lands, a one-on-one conversation happens, everyone moves on. But there's also a version that turns into the defining parable of the 2025 WNBA, a league that grew faster than its internal culture could handle, a fan base addicted to star narratives, a union more sophisticated than ever, and a commissioner learning in real time that transparency is no longer optional. Which ending we get depends on the next 2 weeks.
Watch for a few dominoes. 1. Whether Engelbert and Clark connect privately and say so publicly. 2. Whether Engelbert and Collier set a meeting that sticks, and whether the league recaps it with specifics rather than platitudes. 3. Any on-record movement on rookie-scale compensation mechanics, even if it's a framework for 2026 rather than a check tomorrow. 4. Officiating investment signals, staffing, training, and data transparency. All 4 would change how "be grateful" reads if the words were never said, and even if they were. None of that replaces the basketball, which still deserves to be the headline. But the W in 2025 isn't just a league, it's a case study in modern sports governance. You cannot grow this fast and expect yesterday's communication style to work. Players have platforms, fans have megaphones, reporters have receipts. If you're confident in your truth, show it. If you're confident in your plan, share it. Silence, especially around the name that moves the needle, will always be interpreted as strategy, even when it's just scheduling. Back to the sentence. Be grateful is a terrible hill to die on because gratitude isn't policy, it's posture. Players aren't asking to be thanked, they're asking to be valued. And those are different words with different outputs. One yields social posts and surprise phone calls, the other yields line items and timelines. The fastest way to close the gap between allegation and denial is to make this week's headline impossible to imagine next year. That's not spin, that's structure. It's also, frankly, the best way to protect the brand the league and Clark are building together. Whether you see Clark as the driver of the surge or a beneficiary of a rising tide, the smart move is the same. Lock arms publicly, negotiate hard privately, and stop feeding the beast with preventable misfires. If fans are going to fight over a sentence anyway, make sure they're fighting over a box score line instead.
Here's a thought experiment. Imagine a joint presser where Engelbert, Collier, and Clark sit side by side, outline 3 immediate player-facing improvements, and announce a formal player council that meets monthly with the commissioner's office. No slogans, no vibes, just names, dates, and deliverables. Do that and the grateful narrative dies on its own, because clarity starves controversy the way oxygen feeds it. The story becomes the plan, not the posture. Until then, fans will pick their own truth, and the internet will keep score in real time. If you believe Collier, you see a league that sometimes confuses visibility with value. If you believe Engelbert, you see a commissioner targeted by a misquote at the worst possible time. If you're Clark, you probably just want one day where you can talk about a hedge, a read, and a release point without your name appearing in a labor headline. In 2025, that's probably asking too much. So where does this land? In the short term, it lands here. A finals overshadowed by a trust question, a union sharpening its case, a commissioner publicly promising improvement, and a superstar doing what she always does, keeping it steady in a cyclone. In the long term, it lands in the CBA, where phrases like revenue share, rookie scale modernization, and player input on officiating will either live in ink or die on a press release. That's where be grateful becomes irrelevant, because the numbers will talk.
Let's close the loop. Did the commissioner really tell Caitlin Clark to be grateful? We don't know. We do know what should happen now. The league should over-communicate with its stars, over-invest in the places players have flagged for months, and over-index on transparency while the new deal takes shape. The union should keep surfacing specifics, not just slogans. And all sides should remember that fans who showed up for Clark stayed for the league. So protect both. That's how you turn a messy week into a mature era. And here's where I want your take. If you're a new fan who arrived because of Clark, has this controversy changed how you view the league's leadership? If you're a day one W lifer, what's the one concrete fix you need to see before Oct 31 to feel heard? Drop your thoughts below, then like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Because however this quote war ends, the future of the WNBA is being written in the next few weeks, and you're part of the conversation.